So in the start of section 1, we are going to be looking at the main ideas about what biology is. And biology is the study of all forms of life. So Earth is the home to an incredible amount of diversity, which diversity is all of the living things on the planet. So the biosphere includes all of the living things and all the places where they're found. This will come into play when we get into ecology in the next chapter. We'll talk more about the biosphere and how all of that works. So right there is just a picture of the biosphere. Things can be living in the water, on land, in the air. Anywhere you can find life is considered the biosphere. So as we continue to look, every part of the biosphere is connected with every other part. They aren't independent of one another. They all end up relying on one another to be able to work together. So the biosphere includes many different types of environments. So you've got, like I said before, land environments, which again, we'll talk about when we get into the biomes, but here are some of the land ones. So you've got tropical rainforest, grasslands, deserts, temperate forest, taiga, tundra, mountain zones, polar zones. So all of those are land environments. The biosphere also includes salt and freshwater environments. So here's examples of those. So you've got a tide pool, which is going to be salt water, and then estuary is going to be a combination of salt and fresh water together. And the other part, like I said, is going to be the air or the atmosphere. It's going to be where you could find things that are alive. So, and I mentioned before, biodiversity or diversity is just a variety of things. Biodiversity is going to be all of the variety of life on the planet. Biodiversity generally increases when you go from pole towards the equator. So you're going to find more living things actually near the equator of the planet. Biodiversity is greater in areas with consistently warm temperatures, and that's just because it's easier to live in warm temperatures than it is in cold temperatures. So, as a species, when we talk about that, you'll hear me say that a lot as we go through biology, is one particular type of living thing. So members of a species can interbreed and reproduce fertile offspring. So if they reproduce and don't produce fertile offspring, if the offspring is sterile because they were two different species, that means that they aren't close enough in relation to one another. There are about 2 million different living species that have been identified on the planet. When we talk about organisms, all organisms, they need to have the characteristics of life. So they share certain characteristics with each other. So biology is the scientific study of all life forms or all forms of life. So here in the next few slides, we're going to look at what makes something alive, basically. So an organism is any individual living thing, once again, and all living things are going to be made up of one or more cells. So that's one of the key things to what makes something alive. If it doesn't have one or more cells, it's not alive. All living things need energy for metabolism. So that means, another way of saying this is, all living things need to take in, consume energy, and use that energy. So they need to be taking in energy in some way, and then they're going to be using that energy to do things that they need to in their bodies. All living things are going to respond to their environment. So that means, like, if you come in from school and you walk into your house and you put your hand on the hot stove, you're not going to sit there and be like, something smells good, I wonder what it is. No, you're going to respond to the environment. You're going to respond to that thing that is burning you and take your hand away. All living things have DNA that they can pass on to their offspring. So again, we'll get into this topic right here more in second semester when we talk about genetics, but DNA, all living things need to have it. So all levels of life have systems that are of related parts. So a system is an organized group of interacting parts. A cell is a system of chemicals and processes. So there's all different things that are in that cell that make it up, and so you can consider it a system. A body system includes the organs that interact with one another. An ecosystem includes all the living and non-living things and how they end up interacting with one another. And again, we'll talk about the ecosystems when we get to the next chapter. Biologists study many different systems as we look. So one of the things that we look at is structure is going to usually determine the function. So proteins with different structures perform different functions. For example, you've got heart muscle cells that have a different structure and function than stomach muscle cells. Different species have different anatomical structures with different functions. So, for example, our arm is different than a horse's leg in function, but the anatomical structure of it is similar to one another. So another thing that organisms need to do is they need to maintain what's known as homeostasis. So homeostasis is the ability to maintain a constant internal condition. So that's going to be basically if I said we're going to go outside and run sprints, your body would maintain homeostasis so you don't get all out of whack and die. It would end up basically causing you to sweat to keep your body temperature down so your body didn't cook itself, basically. So that is homeostasis. So homeostasis is the maintaining, again, of a constant internal condition. So homeostasis is usually maintained through negative feedback. So negative feedback systems return a condition to its normal set point. So it's going back to what it wanted to be. When we look at behavior and adaptations, they can help maintain homeostasis. So, for example, if you look at the polar bear here, they've got the white fur and it's actually clear fur, and they've got black skin underneath. And so that clear lets the light come through and it allows it to be warmed, but when you look at the polar bear, it appears white, and so it uses that as camouflage to help maintain its camouflage, and then the black skin underneath allows it to be able to absorb that heat and stay warm. So evolution is that, again, we'll talk about this second semester, is a change in living things over time. So that's another thing that most living things are able to do, is they're going to change over time. The genetic makeup of a population of a species is going to change as time goes on. So evolution can occur through the natural selection of adaptations, so different traits that make an organism better suited for its environment. Adaptations are beneficial, and you end up having the inherited traits that are going to be passed on to those future generations. So evolution can account for both diversity and the unity of life. And that's the end of section 1 and 2.